Welcome to Sleep Through Space. Close your eyes and focus on my voice as we are about to take a deep dive into the entire history of Earth. Ready?
Before anything existed, before planets, stars, space, time, or even the laws of physics, there was nothing we would recognize. No light, no movement, no matter, nothing. Then, about 13.8 billion years ago, something incredible happened. The universe began. The event we call the Big Bang wasn't like a normal explosion. It wasn't an explosion in space, because space didn't exist yet. Instead, space itself expanded from something incredibly small and dense into something huge and constantly growing. In the very first fraction of a second, the universe stretched faster than the speed of light. Time began, space formed, energy filled everything. The early universe was unbelievably hot, trillions of degrees. Particles blinked into existence and disappeared instantly. Forces that now seem separate, gravity, electromagnetism, nuclear forces, were once joined together in a single force. As the universe expanded, it cooled, and those forces separated. Tiny particles formed, like quarks and electrons. These quarks joined together to make protons and neutrons. Even then, everything was still too hot for atoms. Instead, the universe was a glowing cloud of particles and radiation. For hundreds of thousands of years, everything was bright and blurry. Light couldn't travel freely because it kept bouncing off loose particles. But eventually, the universe cooled enough for electrons to stick to protons and form hydrogen atoms. Suddenly, light could travel through space without being blocked. This ancient light is still traveling today and can be detected as the cosmic microwave background, a faint glow left over from the early universe. But even though the universe had finally become transparent, it was still mostly empty. There were no stars yet, no galaxies, just scattered hydrogen and helium drifting through the expanding darkness. Over millions of years, gravity began to pull matter together. Tiny clumps formed in the gas, and these clumps slowly grew larger. Gravity is weak, but given enough time, it changes everything. The small clumps became bigger clouds. Those clouds collapsed, heating up until they ignited nuclear fusion, the process that powers stars. The first stars in the universe were massive, far larger than most stars today. They burned quickly and brightly, using up their fuel in only a few million years. When these giant stars ran out of fuel, they exploded in enormous supernovas. These explosions were powerful enough to create heavier elements: carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, silicon, and iron. Everything we need for planets and for life itself comes from these early stars. As more stars formed and exploded, galaxies started to take shape. Galaxies are huge collections of stars, gas, dust, and dark matter held together by gravity. Our galaxy, the Milky Way, formed during this time. It went through countless collisions with smaller galaxies, growing bigger and more complex over billions of years. About 4.6 billion years ago, in a crowd of gas and dust inside the Milky Way, another star began to form. That star would become our sun. As it lit up, the leftover material around it began sticking together. Dust turned into pebbles, pebbles turned into rocks, and rocks smashed into each other to form larger and larger bodies. Over millions of years, these bodies grew into planets. Earth began as a hot, molten sphere of rock. The surface was constantly hit by asteroids left over from the early solar system. Volcanoes erupted everywhere, covering the planet with lava and thick clouds of gas. There was no oxygen, no oceans, and no life. The air was filled with carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and other harsh gases. But slowly, things changed. As Earth cooled, water vapor in the atmosphere condensed and fell as rain. For millions of years, rain poured down and filled the low areas to create our first oceans. These oceans were vast and deep, covering much of the planet. Inside these early oceans, something remarkable happened. The first life appeared. We still don't know exactly how life began. Scientists have several theories. Some think life started in deep-sea hydrothermal vents, hot cracks in the ocean floor where minerals mix with warm water. Others think life began in warm, shallow pools on the surface, powered by sunlight and lightning. Life might even have come from space, carried on asteroids. But whatever the origin, the first forms of life were tiny, simple, and microscopic. These early organisms were little more than bubbles of chemicals that could copy themselves. But that simple ability to make copies is the first step in evolution. Over time, some copies had small changes that allowed them to survive better. These changes piled up over millions of years. Life remained mostly simple for about 3 billion years. For most of Earth's history, nothing existed except microbes. But these microbes were incredibly important. Some of them learned to use sunlight to make energy in a process called photosynthesis. A byproduct of this process was oxygen. At first, oxygen built up slowly. Then, about 2.4 billion years ago, oxygen levels rose sharply in an event called the Great Oxygenation. This changed the atmosphere and allowed more complex life to eventually appear. Cells evolved internal structures. Some cells swallowed smaller ones, forming partnerships that became essential parts of future life. These internal structures allowed life to grow more complex. Around 540 million years ago, evolution took a dramatic leap forward. In a period known as the Cambrian explosion, life forms in the ocean diversified rapidly. Creatures developed eyes, limbs, shells, and new body shapes. For the first time, predators hunted prey, and animals competed for food, space, and survival. After life flourished in the oceans, plants made their way onto land. The first land plants were small and simple, like mosses. Over time, they grew larger and developed roots, stems, and leaves. These early plants changed the atmosphere again by producing more oxygen and creating habitats for future animals. Once plants were established on land, animals followed. The first land animals were small arthropods, creatures related to insects and spiders. Eventually, early vertebrates came onto land too. These were amphibians that needed water for their eggs but could breathe air and walk on solid ground. As climates and environments shifted, some amphibians evolved tougher skin and eggs that didn't dry out easily. These became the first reptiles. Reptiles then evolved into many forms, including the ancestors of dinosaurs. Dinosaurs appeared around 230 million years ago and became the dominant animals on Earth. They came in every size and shape. Some were as small as chickens, others were huge, like Argentinosaurus, which may have reached over 30 meters in length. There were fast, sharp-toothed hunters like Velociraptor and Tyrannosaurus, as well as long-necked plant-eaters and armored species with spikes and plates. For more than 150 million years, dinosaurs ruled the land. Meanwhile, other types of animals evolved in the seas and skies. Early mammals lived during this time too, but they were mostly small and active at night, avoiding dinosaurs. But the age of dinosaurs came to an abrupt end. Around 66 million years ago, a massive asteroid about 10 kilometers wide struck Earth near what is now Mexico. The impact created a crater over 150 kilometers across. The explosion was stronger than billions of nuclear bombs. Fire spread, the sky darkened with dust and smoke. Sunlight was blocked, plants died, and the food chain collapsed. Most dinosaurs went extinct, along with many other species. With the dinosaurs gone, mammals finally had the chance to thrive. Over millions of years, mammals evolved into many new forms, some large, some small, some that lived in trees, others in water. Among these mammals were the early primates, the ancestors of humans. Primates had grasping hands, good depth perception, and flexible limbs. As Earth's climate changed and forests shrank, some primates adapted to living on the ground. They began walking upright more often, freeing their hands to use tools. By this time, Earth had already gone through billions of years of change. Continents had drifted, oceans had shifted, and climates had varied from hot periods to ice ages. Life had survived extinctions, evolved new abilities, and spread across every environment on the planet. Now, a new chapter in Earth's history was beginning, the rise of humans. And with humans, the world would soon change faster than ever before.
By around 7 million years ago, Africa was home to many different species of early ape-like creatures. Some of them were ancestors of chimpanzees. Others were ancestors of us. These early human relatives are called hominins. They walked on two legs more often than their ape cousins. They had smaller bodies, but gradually larger brains. They lived in forests, grasslands, and other environments that were constantly changing. As the climate shifted over millions of years, forests shrank and open grasslands expanded. This forced many animals, including hominins, to adapt. Walking upright became useful. It allowed them to see farther, stay cooler in the sun, and carry food or tools in their hands. One of the earliest known species in our lineage was Australopithecus. These were small, human-like primates that lived around 4 million years ago. They walked upright, but still climbed trees. Their lives were simple: find food, avoid predators, raise children, and survive. Over time, some hominins developed larger brains and began making simple stone tools. One of these species was Homo habilis, which lived around 2.4 million years ago. They used rough stone tools to cut meat and break open bones to eat the nutritious marrow inside. These tools gave them an advantage over other animals. Using tools changed everything. Once early humans understood they could shape the world around them, they began exploring new possibilities. They used stones to cut, sticks to dig, and fire to cook food. Cooked food was easier to chew and digest, which meant their bodies could use energy in new ways, such as growing bigger brains. Around 2 million years ago, another species appeared, Homo erectus. They were taller, stronger, and more intelligent than earlier humans. They controlled fire, traveled long distances, and lived in larger groups. They were the first humans to leave Africa, spreading into Asia and Europe. The ability to control fire was a huge step forward. Fire provided warmth, kept predators away at night, and allowed humans to cook meat and plants. Cooking made food safer and easier to eat. It unlocked more calories, giving humans more energy for their growing brains. Fire also brought people together. Groups gathered around flames to talk, relax, and share stories or knowledge. These social gatherings helped strengthen communication and cooperation, two skills that would later become central to human success. As thousands of years passed, human species continued to evolve. Some branched off and disappeared. Others thrived for long periods before going extinct. Earth was home to several human-like species at the same time. Neanderthals lived in Europe and Western Asia. Denisovans lived farther east. Homo erectus survived in parts of Asia for nearly 2 million years. But one species, Homo sapiens, was about to become the most influential of all. Our species first appeared in Africa about 300,000 years ago. Early Homo sapiens had the same basic body shape and intelligence that modern humans have today. They were skilled hunters, resourceful gatherers, and highly social. Their brains allowed them to think in complex ways, imagine the future, plan ahead, and communicate using more detailed sounds and gestures. Language slowly began to develop. It might not have sounded like modern speech at first, but early humans were learning to share ideas more precisely. They could warn about dangers, describe locations, teach skills, and work together to hunt. As language improved, culture became richer. Knowledge no longer had to be relearned every generation, it could be passed down. Around 200,000 years ago, human groups spread across Africa. They lived near rivers, in forests, on plains, and even in deserts. They adapted by developing unique tools, clothing, and strategies. By about 100,000 years ago, humans began creating symbolic objects, necklaces, carvings, and simple drawls. This was a sign of advanced thinking. Humans were not just surviving, they were expressing themselves. Around 70,000 years ago, something remarkable happened. Genetic studies suggest a small group of humans left Africa and began migrating around the world. This out of Africa movement was one of the most important migrations in all of history. These humans were explorers,
following coastlines and rivers into new territories. They reached the Middle East first, then spread into Europe and Asia. Along the way, they met other human species like Neanderthals and Denisovans. These encounters sometimes led to conflict, but they also led to interbreeding. Today, many people outside Africa still carry small amounts of Neanderthal or Denisovan DNA. As humans spread, they entered environments they had never seen before. They crossed deserts, mountains, icy regions, and thick forests. They adapted by learning new techniques, making warmer clothing, building shelters, and hunting different animals. Art became more complex. Cave paintings appeared in places like France, Spain, and Indonesia. These paintings showed animals, hunting scenes, and even abstract patterns. No one knows exactly why humans made this art. It might have been spiritual, educational, or simply creative expression, but it showed a deepening imagination. Around 40,000 years ago, humans entered Europe, where Neanderthals had lived for thousands of years. Over time, Neanderthals disappeared. Scientists still debate why. It could have been climate change, competition with Homo sapiens, disease, or a mixture of all three. As humans advanced, they continued exploring. By around 30,000 to 20,000 years ago, humans began crossing into the Americas. During the Ice Age, sea levels were lower, exposing land bridges between Siberia and Alaska. People followed herds of animals across these bridges and slowly traveled south, eventually spreading across North and South America. These early humans faced huge challenges. They hunted large animals like mammoths and giant sloths. They also survived harsh climates, but they adapted, creating warm clothing, sturdy shelters, and clever tools. By 15,000 years ago, humans lived on nearly every continent except Antarctica. They formed tribes and communities, shared food, raised children, and developed belief systems. They learned to cooperate in ways that allowed larger groups to live together peacefully. For most of human history, people lived as hunter-gatherers. They moved from place to place, following the seasons and the movement of animals. They collected fruits, nuts, roots, and plants. They hunted, fished, and gathered everything they needed from the environment. Life was difficult at times, but it was also balanced. Humans lived within the limits of nature, using what they needed and moving on when resources ran out. But around 12,000 years ago, something changed. Humans discovered they could plant seeds and grow crops. They learned they could stay in one place, protect their food, and store it for later. They also began domesticating animals like goats, sheep, and cattle. This new way of living, farming, was a turning point unlike any before. It allowed population numbers to grow. Instead of small groups of 20 to 50 people, communities can now support hundreds or even thousands. Farming villages grew into towns, towns grew into cities, and cities became the world's first civilizations. Humans were about to enter a completely new stage of history, a stage where writing, laws, buildings, trade, and technology would transform the world faster than ever before. The age of hunter-gatherers was ending. The age of civilization was beginning.
Around 12,000 years ago, something happened that changed the direction of human history forever. After hundreds of thousands of years of hunting animals and gathering plants, humans discovered a new way to survive. This new way was farming. It didn't happen overnight. People didn't suddenly wake up one morning and decide to plant an entire field of wheat. It was a slow process, born from observation and experimentation. People noticed that seeds from plants they ate often grew when left on the ground. So they started intentionally planting seeds in cleared patches of land. They learned how much water certain plants needed and which types of soil worked best. They also discovered they could protect and breed animals, keeping them close instead of chasing them across a landscape. Goats, sheep, pigs, and cows were among the first domesticated animals. As farming developed, human life changed in several major ways. First, people no longer needed to move constantly. They could settle down near rivers or fertile lands where crops grew well. This meant they could build more permanent homes. Houses made of mud bricks, wood, or stone. Families stayed in one place long enough to become communities. Communities grew into villages.
Farming also created food surpluses. Instead of barely having enough food to survive, humans could produce more than they needed. Extra food meant that not everyone had to work as a hunter or farmer. Suddenly, people could specialize. One person could become a potter, another a toolmaker, another a builder. With specialization came new skills, new inventions, and new ideas. Villages eventually grew into the first towns. They were still small, but they were more organized. People dug irrigation canals to bring water to their crops. They built storage buildings to protect food from weather and animals. They developed early trade systems, exchanging goods like grain, animal skins, tools, and pottery. As these villages expanded, the first true civilizations began to form. Civilization usually means several things: large populations, organized governments, leaders, writing systems, laws, social classes, and shared culture. These traits appeared in different parts of the world at different times, but they all started with farming. One of the earliest and most famous civilizations formed in Mesopotamia, located between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in modern-day Iraq. This region is often called the cradle of civilization because so many important developments happened there. Around 6,000 years ago, small farming villages in Mesopotamia grew into large cities. One of the most influential cities was Uruk. At its peak, Uruk had tens of thousands of people living within its walls. That may not sound like much today, but at the time it was enormous. Cities like Uruk needed organization. People built walls, canals, roads, and temples. Leaders emerged to make decisions, assign tasks, and maintain order. Priests became important because religion played a central role in daily life. People believed that gods controlled everything, from weather to harvests, and they offered gifts and sacrifices hoping for protection or good fortune. Writing also appeared in Mesopotamia. The earliest writing system was cuneiform, created by pressing symbols into clay tablets with a reed stylus. At first, writing was mainly used to record trade transactions or storehouse inventories, but it soon expanded to include stories, laws, and government records. Writing allowed information to survive beyond a single person's memory. It made learning stronger and long-lasting. While Mesopotamia was rising, other parts of the world were developing too. In Egypt, the Nile River flooded each year, leaving behind rich soil that allowed farming to thrive. People built villages along the river, eventually forming the powerful Egyptian civilization. The Egyptians were known for their massive structures, including pyramids, which served as tombs for pharaohs, rulers believed to be gods on earth. In South India, the Indus Valley civilization emerged. Cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro were well planned, with straight streets, drainage systems, and even early forms of plumbing. These cities showed an advanced understanding of engineering and urban design. In China, along the Yellow River, early dynasties began to form. Chinese society developed bronze tools, pottery, and eventually some of the earliest forms of writing. Their culture placed strong importance on family, ancestors, and harmony with nature. In the Americas, farming developed independently. People grew crops like maize, corn, beans, and squash. Early cultures in Central and South America built large ceremonial centers, pyramids, and cities long before contact with the rest of the world. No matter where they were located, early civilizations began creating inventions that changed daily life. One major invention was the wheel. At first, it was probably used for pottery, but soon people adapted it for carts and transportation. Another important innovation was the plow, which made farming much more efficient. With these tools, fewer people could produce more food. Metalworking also advanced. Early humans first used copper, then learned to mix copper with tin to make bronze, a stronger and more durable material. This period became known as the Bronze Age. Bronze was used for weapons, tools, and art. Later, people discovered how to smelt iron, which was even stronger. Iron tools made farming easier and weapons more effective. This era also saw the creation of complex social structures. Civilizations developed classes based on jobs, wealth, and influence. At the top were rulers, priests, and nobles. Below them were merchants, artisans, and farmers. At the bottom were laborers and slaves. These social hierarchies shaped how societies operated. Cities continued to grow, but with growth came problems. Overcrowding, disease, and conflicts over land or water became common. Civilizations responded by developing laws. One famous example is the Code of Hammurabi, written by the Babylonian king Hammurabi. It listed rules and punishments from property disputes to violent crimes. It's one of the earliest known law codes in history. Trade connected civilizations. People exchanged goods across long distances: salt, spices, metal tools, fabrics, and precious stones. Trade routes across land and sea helped spread ideas, technologies, and beliefs. Civilizations learned from each other and improved through shared knowledge. Religion also became more organized. Temples, rituals, and priesthoods grew in importance. People explained natural events through stories about gods and spirits. These early belief systems shaped culture and influenced everything from art to government. As time passed, civilizations began building monuments, palaces, and massive structures to show power and honor their gods. The Egyptians built pyramids. Mesopotamians built ziggurats. The Chinese built large palaces and tombs. The people of the Americas built step pyramids and ceremonial complexes. Writing systems evolved too. Egypt had hieroglyphs. China had early character systems. The Indus Valley had symbols that remain mysterious today. And Mesopotamia continued expanding cuneiform. Writing allowed civilizations to pass down stories, laws, medical knowledge, mathematics, and astronomy. Speaking of astronomy, many early civilizations carefully watched the stars. They tracked the movements of the sun, moon, and planets to create calendars. These calendars helped them know when to plant crops, celebrate festivals, or plan religious ceremonies. Mathematics grew out of practical needs like measuring land, building structures, and keeping track of trade. Early math systems included basic addition, subtraction, multiplication, and even geometry. As civilizations advanced, they also faced challenges. Floods, droughts, invasions, and disease outbreaks could weaken or destroy entire cultures. Some cities were abandoned because of climate change. Others fell due to wars. But even when civilizations collapsed, their ideas lived on through the groups that followed. Around 4,000 to 5,000 years ago, humans had transformed from small wandering tribes into complex societies. People lived in cities, practiced organized religion, built large structures, and used writing to communicate. Farming had allowed populations to grow. Inventions and discoveries had made daily life easier. The world was becoming more connected through trade and travel. Civilization was still young, but the foundations of modern society were already in place. Laws, governments, technology, art, and written language.
As the early civilizations settled into their river valleys and built their cities, the world was slowly preparing for its next major stage, the rise of empires. An empire is different from a simple city or kingdom. It is a large political system that rules over many peoples, cultures, and territories. And the first empires in human history changed everything: warfare, trade, culture, law, and the way people understood power. The earliest known empire was created by Sargon of Akkad around 4,300 years ago in Mesopotamia. Before Sargon, each city was mostly independent, fighting with its neighbors from time to time. But Sargon had a bigger vision. He united dozens of cities under one rule, forming the Akkadian Empire. This was the first time a single leader controlled such a large area. He used organized armies, appointed governors, and built networks of roads and communication. For the first time, a huge region was held together under one government. Though the Akkadian Empire eventually fell, it showed the world what was possible. Soon, the idea of empire spread everywhere. In Egypt, the Old Kingdom had built the pyramids, but later, the Middle and New Kingdoms expanded Egypt's power far beyond the Nile River. Egyptian pharaohs controlled trade routes, built armies, and negotiated alliances. They created a highly organized society with scribes, architects, priests, and traders. Egypt became one of the wealthiest civilizations on Earth. To the east, in Mesopotamia, new powers rose and fell. The Babylonians built the famous city of Babylon, known for its towering walls and impressive architecture. Under King Hammurabi, Babylon created one of the first written law codes, ensuring that justice was not random or based on personal preference. The Assyrians later built a fierce empire known for its military strength, advanced iron weapons, and huge libraries of knowledge. While all this was happening, another region was rising to importance: the Eastern Mediterranean. Here, several small civilizations began shaping the future in unique ways. One of these cultures was the Phoenicians, excellent sailors and traders who built ships that traveled across the Mediterranean Sea. They founded cities like Tyre and Sidon and created trading colonies, including Carthage in North Africa. Their biggest contribution, however, was the alphabet. Instead of using hundreds of symbols like earlier writing systems, the Phoenician alphabet used a limited set of letters. This idea spread and eventually became the basis for the Greek and Roman alphabets, and later the alphabet used in many languages today. Nearby, the ancient Israelites formed a small but influential kingdom. Their religious beliefs introduced the concept of monotheism, belief in only one God. This idea later shaped the development of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, three of the world's major religions. But the region that would shape the next era most dramatically was Greece. Early Greek civilization started with the Minoans on the island of Crete, who built palaces and frescoes. They were followed by the Mycenaeans, who lived on the Greek mainland and fought in legendary battles like the Trojan War. After a mysterious collapse, Greece entered a period known as the Dark Age, where writing disappeared and many cities shrank. But over time, Greece recovered. New city-states formed, small independent communities, each with its own government, culture, and identity. Some of the most famous were Athens, Sparta, Corinth, and Thebes. Despite sharing a language and religion, these city-states often competed or fought one another. Athens developed democracy, a system where free male citizens could vote and participate in decision-making. It was imperfect, women, slaves, and foreigners were excluded, but it was a groundbreaking idea that influenced future governments. Athens also became a center of philosophy, art, drama, and science. Thinkers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle explored questions about truth, justice, nature, and the human mind. Sparta, in contrast, was a military society focused on discipline and strength. Spartan children trained from a young age to become soldiers, and the city was ruled by strict laws and powerful leaders. While Athens valued debate and creativity, Sparta valued order and toughness. These differences led to conflict. Athens and Sparta fought in the Peloponnesian War, a long and exhausting struggle that weakened both sides. Not long after, a powerful new figure entered the stage: Alexander the Great. Alexander was the king of Macedonia, a region north of Greece. He had been taught by Aristotle and trained as a warrior. When he became king, he united the Greek city-states, some by alliance, others by force. Then he launched one of the greatest military campaigns in history. He conquered the Persian Empire, one of the largest empires on Earth at the time. He marched through Egypt, the Middle East, and all the way into India. By the time he was done, his empire stretched from Greece to the Himalayas. Along the way, he founded cities, most famously Alexandria in Egypt, and encouraged the blending of cultures. This mixture of Greek, Egyptian, Persian, and Indian ideas created what historians call Hellenistic civilization. Science, mathematics, art, and philosophy flourished. Thinkers like Euclid developed geometry, while engineers like Archimedes invented machines and studied physics. Doctors made discoveries about the human body. Scholars wrote books and built libraries. But Alexander died young, and his empire broke into smaller kingdoms. Even so, the ideas from this era continued spreading for centuries. While the Greeks and Macedonians were shaping the Mediterranean world, another power was rising in Italy.
Rome started as a small city on the Tiber River. According to legend, it was founded by Romulus and Remus, twin brothers raised by a wolf. Historically, Rome grew slowly, first as a kingdom and then as a republic. A republic is a system where people elect leaders to make decisions on their behalf. Rome's growth was steady but unstoppable. It built one of the most efficient armies in history, known for its discipline and organization. Roman soldiers constructed roads, forts, and bridges wherever they went, connecting the empire and allowing rapid movement. Over time, Rome conquered the Italian peninsula, then the Mediterranean, then large parts of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. After defeating Carthage in the Punic Wars, Rome became the most powerful state in the known world. Roman society had many layers: senators, generals, merchants, farmers, and slaves. It created a legal system that influenced many modern laws. It built grand structures like aqueducts, amphitheaters, and temples. Roman engineering was so advanced that many of their roads and buildings still exist today. Eventually, the Roman Republic transformed into the Roman Empire under Augustus Caesar. This era brought peace to large parts of the empire, a period known as Pax Romana, or Roman peace. During this time, trade thrived, cities grew, and culture flourished. While all this was happening in Europe and the Mediterranean, great civilizations were also growing in Asia. In China, the Zhou dynasty gave way to a chaotic period known as the Warring States. Philosophers like Confucius and Laozi offered ideas about ethics, harmony, and government that shaped Chinese culture for thousands of years. Eventually, the Qin dynasty united China under its first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. He standardized writing, currency, and measurements and began building the Great Wall. After the Qin came the Han dynasty, one of the most successful periods in Chinese history. China developed advanced technologies like paper, seismographs, iron tools, and large ships. The Silk Road, an enormous trade network, connected China to Persia, India, and even Rome. In India, powerful kingdoms rose along the Ganges River. The Maurya Empire under Chandragupta and later Ashoka united much of the subcontinent. Ashoka spread Buddhism and promoted nonviolence, creating one of the most peaceful and philosophical periods in ancient Indian history. In the Americas, civilizations like the Maya and the early Andean cultures were developing written languages, calendars, astronomy, and engineering. The Maya built step pyramids and tracked the motions of the planets with exceptional accuracy. In South America, the people who later influenced the Inca developed farming on mountainsides and built stone structures without mortar. Across the world, humans were building larger societies, discovering new technologies, exploring ideas, and creating systems that still shape us today. Empire after empire rose, spread, and fell. Cultures clashed, mixed, and evolved. Roads connected cities, ships connected continents, trade connected economies, and ideas connected minds. This era laid the foundation for modern politics, science, mathematics, religion, and art. Humanity had moved from isolated villages to interconnected worlds filled with complexity and ambition. But the ancient world was far from peaceful. Wars, invasions, diseases, and natural disasters constantly reshaped civilizations. New empires would rise, old ones would crumble, and new religions would change billions of lives. The next era in history would bring dramatic transformations, from the rise of Christianity and Islam to the fall of Rome, the spread of new inventions, and the birth of the medieval world.
As the classical world reached its height, it also moved toward dramatic change. Empires do not last forever. They grow, they flourish, and eventually they weaken. Trade routes shift, climates change, leaders make mistakes, enemies adapt, populations rise and fall. Human history is full of these cycles. Around 2,000 years ago, several major civilizations were at turning points. Rome was powerful but increasingly strained. Han China was advanced but facing internal conflict. And in the Middle East, the Persian Empire was experiencing waves of change. At the same time, new religions were emerging, beliefs that would shape the future of billions of people. These spiritual movements offered purpose, hope, and identity during times of uncertainty. In the Roman Empire, a small religious group in Judea began attracting attention. Its ideas would eventually transform an entire civilization. This movement centered around Jesus of Nazareth, whose teachings focused on compassion, forgiveness, and the value of every human life. After his death, his followers spread his message across the Roman world. At first, Christianity was small. It faced conflict and misunderstanding, but Christians built strong communities, cared for the poor, and offered a message of hope in an unpredictable world. As centuries passed, Christianity gained followers among merchants, soldiers, slaves, and eventually Roman leaders. By the 4th century, Emperor Constantine adopted Christianity, and it became the dominant religion of the Roman Empire. While Christianity grew, Rome itself was changing. The empire had expanded too far, becoming difficult to govern. Its borders were constantly threatened by migrating tribes, Goths, Vandals, Huns, and others who were pushed westward by conflict and climate pressures in Central Asia. Some groups sought peace inside Roman territory. Others fought to carve out land of their own. Economically, Rome struggled. Maintaining huge armies and vast territories was expensive. Farms produced less food in some regions. Trade routes shifted. Disease outbreaks weakened populations. Political leadership became unstable, with rapid changes in emperors and frequent power struggles. By the late 300s and early 400s, pressure from outside groups increased. The Visigoths sacked Rome in 410 CE, shocking the empire. Other tribes soon followed, creating their own kingdoms inside former Roman lands. Eventually, in 476 CE, the last Western Roman emperor was removed from power. This event is often marked as the end of the Western Roman Empire. However, the Eastern Roman Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire, continued for nearly 1,000 more years. Its capital, Constantinople, became a center of learning, art, and trade. The Byzantines preserved Greek and Roman knowledge that might have otherwise been lost, but even they would eventually face challenges from new powers rising around them. Meanwhile, far across Africa, another powerful civilization was flourishing. The Kingdom of Aksum, located in what is now Ethiopia and Eritrea, grew wealthy from trade routes that connected Africa, India, and the Mediterranean. Aksum adopted Christianity early and built impressive stone structures, some of which still stand today. Across the Atlantic Ocean, civilizations in the Americas continued to develop. The Maya built large cities filled with temples and plazas. They refined their calendar, making it one of the most accurate in ancient history. Their understanding of astronomy was remarkable. They tracked the motions of planets with precision. In the Andes, the ancestors of the Inca expanded farming across mountains and created intricate stone architecture. In India, after the fall of the Maurya Empire, other powerful kingdoms emerged. The Gupta Empire brought a golden age to northern India around 1600 years ago. During this time, mathematics, astronomy, and literature flourished. Indian scholars developed the concept of zero, made advances in medicine, and composed poetry and epics that remain influential. But the most dramatic new force in world history appeared in the Arabian Peninsula during the 600s: Islam. The region had long been home to traders who moved goods between Africa, Asia, and the Mediterranean, but it was also divided into tribes with different beliefs. In this environment, the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad began to spread. His message emphasized unity, justice, charity, and submission to one God. After his death, Muslim leaders continued spreading these teachings. Islam quickly expanded across the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Europe and Asia. This was not just a religious movement, but also a cultural and scientific one. The Islamic world became a center of learning, preserving and expanding knowledge from Greece, Rome, Persia, India, and China. Cities like Baghdad, Damascus, and Cordoba built libraries, hospitals, and universities. Scholars made breakthroughs in mathematics, medicine, chemistry, astronomy, and engineering.
They translated ancient texts into Arabic, keeping knowledge alive during periods when Europe struggled. While these new powers grew, China was experiencing periods of rise and fall. After the Han Dynasty collapsed, China entered centuries of division, but eventually, strong dynasties restored order. The Tang Dynasty created a golden age of culture, poetry, and technology. The Song Dynasty later introduced inventions like gunpowder, the compass, and advanced printing. These technologies would eventually change the entire world. During this time, Europe was experiencing what we often call the early Middle Ages. After Rome's fall, Europe became divided into many small kingdoms. Trade declined, cities shrank, learning suffered. Life became more local and rural. But not everything was dark. Monasteries preserved books, farming techniques slowly improved, and local cultures began forming the identities of future nations. In the 700s and 800s, a powerful leader named Charlemagne united much of Western Europe. His empire encouraged learning and helped spread Christianity. Although it did not last long after his death, it laid the groundwork for future European states. Meanwhile, powerful horse-riding warriors known as the Vikings began exploring, raiding, and trading across Europe. They sailed incredible distances in longships, reaching as far as North America around the year 1000. They built settlements, traded goods, and influenced cultures wherever they went. During the same period, new states were forming in Eastern Europe and Russia. The Kievan Rus adopted Eastern Orthodox Christianity from the Byzantine Empire, shaping the region's future. Across Africa, great kingdoms thrived. West Africa saw the rise of Ghana, a wealthy empire built on gold and trade. Later, Mali and Songhai would become famous for cities like Timbuktu, known for its universities and scholars. Trade across the Sahara Desert connected Africa to the wider world. In the Pacific, the Polynesians achieved one of the most impressive feats of human exploration in human history. Using only stars, waves, and birds for navigation, they sailed huge distances across the ocean. They settled islands like Hawaii, Easter Island, and New Zealand. Their voyages remain some of the greatest examples of human exploration. Throughout this entire era, the world became more connected. Trade routes, by land and sea, spread goods, ideas, and religions across continents. The Silk Road linked China to the Middle East and Europe. Indian Ocean trade connected Africa, Arabia, India, and Southeast Asia. African caravans crossed the Sahara. European ships reached new coasts. Knowledge traveled farther than ever before. But alongside progress, danger always traveled too. Diseases spread more easily. Conflicts became larger. And in the 1300s, the world faced one of the most devastating events in human history: the Black Death. The Black Death was a deadly plague that swept across Asia, Africa, and Europe. It likely began in Central Asia and traveled along trade routes carried by fleas on rats. When it reached Europe around 1347, it spread rapidly. Towns and villages suffered horrifying losses. In just a few years, the plague killed tens of millions of people, perhaps 1/3 of Europe's population. The impact was enormous. Labor shortages forced changes in farming, wages, and social structure. People questioned old beliefs. Many communities were reshaped entirely. The Black Death marked the end of the Middle Ages and opened the door to a new era where old systems were questioned and new ideas began to grow. Around this time, the Mongols, led by Genghis Khan and later his descendants, created the largest land empire in history. They unified the steppes of Central Asia, conquered huge regions, and controlled massive trade networks. Although known for their military strength, the Mongols also encouraged trade, protected travelers, and allowed freedom of religion. Their empire connected East and West in ways that helped spread knowledge faster than ever before. By the late Middle Ages, Europe began to rebuild. Trade increased, cities grew, new ideas spread. Soon, a cultural movement known as the Renaissance would spark a rebirth of learning, art, and science. But the world was changing beyond Europe too. China, under the Ming Dynasty, built great ships, and sent explorers like Zheng He across the Indian Ocean. Africa's empires continued to flourish. The Islamic world remained a center of science and culture. The Americas saw
As the ancient world moved through its early golden ages, something new began to rise across different continents at roughly the same time. People didn't just build cities anymore. They built systems, ways of organizing life, ruling nations, spreading beliefs, and connecting faraway cultures through trade. This next era is the story of empires and the powerful ideas that shaped them. Around 2,500 years ago, the world was becoming more connected than ever before. Not globally connected like today, of course, but connected enough that ideas could travel hundreds or even thousands of miles. Empires were growing larger, writing was becoming more widespread, and new belief systems began to challenge old traditions. It was a period of huge change, and many of the foundations of the modern world were laid during these centuries. Let's walk through this era by moving across different regions, seeing how each shaped global history in its own way. The Persian Empire, a new way to rule. In the lands we now call Iran, a powerful empire was rising. The Persian Empire, started by Cyrus the Great, became one of the largest empires the world had ever seen up to that time. Cyrus didn't just conquer lands, he created a new model for ruling them. He allowed different cultures to keep their languages, religions, and customs. Instead of destroying traditions, he protected them. This earned him loyalty from groups who had been treated harshly by earlier rulers. When Cyrus conquered Babylon, he allowed local gods and traditions to remain. Many people welcomed him as a liberator, which was rare in the ancient world. The Persians built massive road systems, including the famous Royal Road, which made communication and trade faster than ever before. Messengers on horseback could travel incredible distances, spreading news and carrying orders. This system helped hold the empire together. The Persians also organized their lands into provinces, each ruled by a governor known as a satrap. This early form of federal-style government influenced many later empires, including the Romans. And while Persia and Greece would soon clash in famous wars, Persia's contributions to administration and culture would echo through history. Greece, the birthplace of Western thought. While Persia was expanding, another civilization was rising on the mountainous shores of the Aegean Sea. Ancient Greece. Greece was never a single united kingdom. Instead, it was a collection of city-states, each with its own government, customs, and identity. Two of the most famous were Athens and Sparta. Athens experimented with something completely new: democracy. Citizens could vote on laws and decisions. It wasn't democracy by our standards. Women, slaves, and foreigners couldn't vote. But it planted the seeds for the political systems that many countries use today. Greek thinkers began asking questions that would shape science, philosophy, and logic for centuries. Socrates asked people to examine their beliefs. Plato imagined a perfect world of ideas. Aristotle studied everything from biology to ethics and influenced nearly all Western thought that came after him. And then there was Alexander the Great, who created a massive empire stretching from Greece to Egypt and all the way to India. Though his empire didn't last long after his death, Alexander spread Greek culture across 3 continents. Language, art, mathematics, and science traveled with his armies, creating a blended world known as the Hellenistic Age. This mixture of cultures led to new discoveries, including breakthroughs in astronomy, engineering, and medicine. Ideas were spreading more rapidly than ever before. India, empires, enlightenment, and the spread of spirituality. At the same time, the Indian subcontinent was becoming a major center of trade, culture, and spiritual innovation. One of the earliest large political systems in India was the Maurya Empire, led by Chandragupta Maurya, and later by his grandson, Ashoka the Great. Ashoka experienced a brutal war early in his reign, and the suffering he witnessed changed him. Afterwards, he turned to Buddhism and began spreading messages of peace, kindness, and tolerance. He sent missionaries across Asia, and through their work, Buddhism spread far beyond India, into Sri Lanka, Southeast Asia, China, and eventually Japan. India also became a center of learning.
New math concepts emerged here, including early forms of what would eventually become zero, a breakthrough that completely changed science and mathematics worldwide. Trade routes connected India with the Middle East, Africa, and China. Spices, fabrics, and precious stones traveled across deserts, mountains, and seas, helping build economic networks that shaped global history. China: order, philosophy, and the mandate of heaven. China was entering its own golden age. After centuries of conflict, the Zhou dynasty developed the idea of the mandate of heaven, the belief that rulers were chosen by a higher power and had to govern fairly. If a ruler was unjust, it was believed that natural disasters or social unrest were signs that heaven had withdrawn its favor. This idea guided Chinese politics for more than 2,000 years. During this period, great thinkers emerged. Confucius taught about ethics, respect, and social harmony. His ideas shaped Chinese society deeply, influencing family structure, government, and education. Taoism offered a different path, focusing on nature, balance, and going with the flow of life. Meanwhile, legalism promoted strict laws and strong control, which the Qin dynasty later used to unify China. China was also home to major technological breakthroughs. Iron tools became common, farming improved, and cities grew. Roads and canals strengthened the empire. Later, under the Han dynasty, China expanded trade along the Silk Road, a vast network of routes connecting East Asia to the Middle East and Europe. Chinese silk became one of the world's most valuable goods. Rome: power, engineering, and law. As Chinese and Indian empires grew stronger, a new superpower emerged in Europe: Rome. Rome began as a small city-state on the Italian peninsula. Through alliances, wars, and well-organized armies, it expanded into a vast empire surrounding the Mediterranean Sea. Roman engineering was extraordinary. They built strong roads, aqueducts carrying fresh water, public baths, and massive arenas like the Colosseum. Roman law also became extremely influential. Ideas like innocent until proven guilty and equality under the law began here. The Romans didn't always live up to these ideals, but the framework shaped legal systems across the Western world. Rome often clashed with Persia, but they also traded and exchanged ideas. These two great empires acted like anchors on either side of Europe and Asia, shaping culture and politics for centuries. The rise of major world religions. This era also saw the beginnings of many of the world's major belief systems. Judaism further developed its religious laws and writings. Christianity began in the Middle East as a small movement within Judaism. Over time, it spread across the Roman Empire, eventually becoming one of the most important religions in world history. Buddhism continued spreading across Asia. Hinduism evolved in India. New philosophies in Greece and China shaped entire civilizations. And as trade routes linked societies, these ideas traveled farther and faster. For the first time in human history, the world wasn't just a collection of isolated cultures. It was beginning to form a connected network of ideas. The first global web of trade. By around 2,000 years ago, trade linked China, India, Persia, Arabia, Africa, and Rome. Silk, spices, gold, ivory, glass, and other valuable goods moved across deserts, mountains, and seas. No single person traveled the whole route, but each region passed items to the next, forming a chain that connected the ancient world. This trade brought wealth and opportunity, but also risk. Bandits, storms, and political tensions made journeys dangerous. Still, merchants continued, driven by profit and curiosity. This early web of connections laid the foundation for global trade systems that would come much later. For the first time in history, ideas, cultures, and technologies could spread across entire continents. It was slow, but it was happening. A world on the edge of transformation. As we reach the end of this era, the world had changed dramatically from its earlier prehistoric beginnings. Civilizations had grown, empires had risen, ideas and religions had spread, trade had connected distant lands, technology and engineering had advanced, writing systems had evolved into complex languages and literature. Yet the story was far from over. Soon, the world would enter a period of massive change, falling empires, new powers rising, and the beginning of the medieval era. Part 7 will continue this journey, following the collapse of ancient empires and the birth of new civilizations that shaped the next chapter of human history.
By the time the ancient world reached its height, something surprising began to happen across different continents at almost the same time. Many of the great empires started to weaken. Some collapsed suddenly, others slowly faded over centuries. But their fall didn't bring an age of darkness. Instead, it opened the door for new cultures, new religions, new inventions, and new ways of living that would define the next 1,000 years. This period, beginning roughly 1800 years ago, marks the shift from the classical world to the early medieval era. And although the word medieval often brings to mind castles and knights, the truth is much more complicated. It was a time of huge migrations, powerful kingdoms, scientific discoveries, and the mixing of cultures on a massive scale. To understand this shift, let's travel through the regions that experienced the most dramatic change. The slow decline of Rome. The Roman Empire, which once controlled land from Britain to Egypt, began facing a long list of problems. Many of these issues weren't sudden. They built up over generations. One major problem was size. Rome was simply too large to govern easily. Messages could take weeks to travel from one end of the empire to the other. Armies had to cover huge distances to defend borders, and local leaders sometimes ignored orders from the central government because they felt too far away to be controlled. Another issue was money. Constant wars drained Rome's treasury. The government tried raising taxes, but this pushed many farmers into poverty. Wealthy landowners gained even more power as small farmers struggled to survive. Inequality soared. Meanwhile, emperors were frequently replaced. Some were overthrown, others assassinated. Civil wars broke out. Instead of focusing on external enemies, Roman leaders often fought each other. At the same time, large groups of migrating peoples began pressing against Rome's borders. Many were pushed westward by conflicts happening far across Asia, beginning a chain reaction of movement. These groups, Goths, Vandals, Huns, and others, were not simple barbarians, as Romans called them. They had complex cultures and were often fleeing violence or seeking land to settle on. Rome didn't collapse in one dramatic moment. Instead, it gradually weakened. One by one, its western territories fell under the control of new kingdoms formed by these migrating peoples. By the year 476 AD, the last Western Roman emperor was removed, marking the symbolic end of the Western Roman Empire. But Rome didn't truly die. Its culture, laws, language, and religion survived and influenced the kingdoms that replaced it. And in the East, a powerful successor remained. The Eastern Roman Empire, a different path. While the western half collapsed, the eastern half, later called the Byzantine Empire, continued for another 1,000 years. Its capital, Constantinople, became one of the richest and most advanced cities in the world. The Byzantines preserved much of Roman law, Greek culture, and Christian traditions. They built enormous churches, including the famous Hagia Sophia with its giant dome. They developed strong trade networks connecting Europe and Asia, and they served as a bridge between different cultures during a time when many regions were isolated. The Byzantines faced their own challenges, wars, religious conflicts, plagues, but they remained a major power throughout much of the medieval period. The rise of new kingdoms in Europe. After Rome's western half fell, Europe didn't become empty or chaotic. Instead, new kingdoms formed from a mix of Roman influence and local cultures. The Franks built a powerful kingdom in what is now France and Germany. Under rulers like Clovis and later Charlemagne, the Frankish kingdom expanded and helped spread Christianity throughout Western Europe. In Britain, groups like the Angles and Saxons formed smaller kingdoms after Roman rule ended. Ireland developed its own traditions of learning, art, and Christianity, producing monks who helped preserve books and knowledge. In Northern Europe, saw the rise of Scandinavian cultures, the ancestors of the Vikings, who would later explore, trade, and raid across Europe. This era was far from simple, but it was full of cultural blending, technological improvements, and the slow formation of nations that still exist today. The Gupta Empire and India's Golden Age. While Europe dealt with Rome's fall, India entered a period often called its Golden Age under the Gupta Empire. This era saw huge advancements in science, mathematics, literature, and art. Indian mathematicians developed important concepts, including sophisticated versions of zero, place value numbers, and early algebra. In astronomy, scholars proposed that Earth rotates on its axis and orbits the Sun, ideas centuries ahead of Europe. Medicine advanced too. Doctors wrote detailed medical texts, performed surgeries, and studied how the human body works. Trade thrived across the Indian Ocean, connecting India with Arabia, Africa, and Southeast Asia. Hinduism developed into its classical form, while Buddhism continued spreading to distant lands. The Gupta Empire eventually declined due to invasions and internal conflicts, but its cultural achievements shaped India for centuries. China's transformations, from Han to Tang. In China, the Han Dynasty, one of the greatest in Chinese history, collapsed around the same time Rome did. This led to a long period of division known as the Three Kingdoms era, followed by centuries of shifting dynasties. Despite the chaos, China saw tremendous cultural and technological progress. The Sui dynasty reunited the country, building massive infrastructure projects like the Grand Canal, which linked northern and southern China and became vital for trade and food supply. Then came the Tang dynasty, one of the brightest eras in Chinese history. The Tang Empire was large, wealthy, and culturally vibrant. Its capital, Chang'an, became the most populated city in the world and a global hub for trade and ideas. Poetry flourished, with famous poets like Li Bai and Du Fu. Buddhism spread widely. The Silk Road continued thriving, bringing goods and ideas from Persia, India, and the Middle East. China's influence stretched across East Asia, shaping Korea, Japan, and Southeast Asia through diplomacy, trade, and cultural exchange. The emergence of Islam and a new unified world. Perhaps the most transformative event of this era took place in the 7th century in the Arabian Peninsula. A new religious and cultural movement began, Islam. Within a century of its founding, Islamic leaders had unified large regions across the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Asia and Europe. But this wasn't just a military achievement. Islamic civilization became a major center of science, art, philosophy, and trade. Cities like Baghdad, Cordoba, and Cairo became homes to huge libraries, universities, and scientific centers. Scholars in the Islamic world preserved ancient Greek, Indian, and Persian knowledge while making major discoveries of their own. They advanced algebra, astronomy, medicine, chemistry, and geography. Their work later reached Europe and helped spark the Renaissance. Islamic trade networks connected the Mediterranean with East Africa, India, and even China. For the first time, a truly vast cultural web stretched across much of the Old World. Africa's growing kingdoms. While Europe and Asia were undergoing major transformations, Africa was also home to powerful kingdoms and vibrant cultures. In West Africa, the Kingdom of Ghana became wealthy through gold and trade. Caravans crossed the Sahara Desert carrying salt, gold, and ideas. These trade routes linked African societies with North Africa and the Middle East. In East Africa, Aksum, in modern Ethiopia and Eritrea, became a major trading empire, known for its giant stone monuments and early adoption of Christianity. Along the Swahili coast, cities like Kilwa and Mombasa grew rich from Indian Ocean trade, blending African, Arab, and Persian influences. Africa's history during this era was far more connected and prosperous than many people realize today. The Americas' complex societies across continents. While the Old World dealt with collapsing empires and rising religions, the Americas continued developing independently. In Mesoamerica, cultures like the Maya built cities with giant temples, complex calendars, and advanced writing systems. They studied astronomy and mathematics,
creating detailed sky charts. Farther north, societies like the Hopewell and later the Mississippian cultures built large earthen mounds and sophisticated trade networks. In South America, civilizations in the Andes, such as the Moche and later the Wari and Tiahuanacu, developed karst farming, advanced metalworking, and intricate textiles. The Americas were not empty lands waiting for discovery. They were filled with innovation, agriculture, art, and religion, developed entirely separately from Eurasia and Africa. A world in transition. By the end of this era, roughly the year 1000, the world had changed in nearly every way. Rome had fallen in the west, but lived on through new kingdoms and the Byzantine Empire. China was in a golden age. India had produced scientific breakthroughs that changed the future. The Islamic world had become a center of learning and culture. Africa was home to wealthy training kingdoms. The Americas continued developing complex societies. Humanity was entering a new phase, one of exploration, invention, and cultural blending on an even larger scale.
By the year 1000, the world was beginning to knit itself together in new ways. Kingdoms were growing, trade routes were expanding, and new technologies were spreading across continents. This was not a time of isolation or stagnation, despite the stereotypes that survive today. Instead, it was a period of widespread change, slow in some places, fast in others, driven by curiosity, conflict, innovation, and the human desire to explore and improve. To understand this era, we must look at how different regions influenced one another. Trade linked distant worlds. Knowledge traveled across deserts, seas, and mountains. And everywhere, societies were building the foundations for the next great age of global transformation. Europe rebuilds and begins to flourish. After the collapse of Western Rome, Europe spent several centuries reorganizing itself. By the year 1000, stability was returning, and new forms of society were taking shape. Most people lived in small farming villages surrounded by forests, rivers, and fields. Life was local, but change was coming. The feudal system. Europe developed a system where land was exchanged for service. Kings granted large estates to nobles. Nobles offered protection to peasants. Peasants worked the land and provided food. It wasn't equal or fair, but it created structure and security in a world recovering from invasions and instability. Over time, towns began to form around markets, monasteries, castles, and trade routes. These towns were the seeds of future cities. Castles and knights. As local leaders sought to defend their lands, they built stone castles, fortresses that dominated the surrounding countryside. Knights became the armored warriors of Europe, trained from youth to fight on horseback. Romantic stories later described them as noble heroes, but in reality, many knights were simply powerful men with weapons. Their influence shaped politics, warfare, and culture for centuries. The rise of the Church. The Christian Church became Europe's most stable institution. Monks preserved ancient books, taught reading and writing, and offered medical care. Cathedrals grew taller and grander. Pilgrims traveled across Europe to visit holy sites. The Church also connected Europe to the wider world, linking it spiritually and culturally to the Middle East and beyond. A growing population. Between the years 1000 and 1300, Europe's population nearly doubled. Better farming tools like the heavy plow and the horse collar allowed farmers to produce more food. As diets improved, families grew, and new towns spread across the landscape. Europe was slowly becoming stronger and more confident. The Islamic Golden Age continues. While Europe rebuilt,
the Islamic world remained the most scientifically and culturally advanced region on Earth. Cities of knowledge. Baghdad, Cairo, Cordoba, and Isfahan were home to libraries, universities, observatories, and hospitals. Scholars studied everything from astronomy to medicine, mathematics to philosophy. They translated Greek, Persian, Indian, and Roman texts into Arabic, preserving knowledge that might have otherwise been lost. These ideas later traveled into Europe, sparking new curiosity and scientific thought. Mathematics and science. During this time, scholars developed algebra, refined geometry, improved astronomical tools, and made medical discoveries that remained unmatched for centuries. They mapped the stars, measured Earth with surprising accuracy, and advanced chemistry, optics, and engineering. Papermaking, originally from China, spread across the Islamic world, making books far more accessible. Trade and culture. Merchants traveled from Spain to India, from West Africa to China. They carried goods like silk, spices, metalwork, and ceramics. They also carried ideas, religious teachings, scientific theories, and artistic styles, helping connect the old world into a massive cultural network. China's innovations shaped the world. Around the same time, China was experiencing its own era of major growth and creativity. The Song dynasty, beginning in the late 900s, became one of the most inventive periods in world history. Chinese society saw dramatic changes. Gunpowder was refined and used in early weapons. Compasses allowed sailors to navigate without stars. Movable type printing helped spread books and learning. Advanced farming boosted food production. Large cities like Kaifeng and Hangzhou became bustling urban centers. China also developed complex markets, paper money, and iron production on a scale unmatched anywhere else. Art and culture. Poetry, landscape painting, and ceramics flourished. Scholars studied Confucian texts and developed new philosophies. China's cultural influence spread into Korea, Japan, and Southeast Asia. Trade by sea. The Chinese built large ships called junks, capable of crossing long distances. They explored the seas of Asia, connecting with India, Arabia, and Africa. The maritime Silk Road became a major trade route, boosting wealth and spreading ideas. India's regional kingdoms and cultural blending. India did not have a single dominant empire during this era, but it remained a region rich in culture, trade, and scientific knowledge. Regional powers. Different kingdoms controlled different areas, such as the Chola in the south, the Rajputs in the north, and various Buddhist states in the east. These kingdoms competed with each other, but they also traded, shared art, and improved technology. Religion and culture. Hinduism evolved with new temples, rituals, and stories. Buddhism continued spreading across Asia. India's art, architecture, and literature flourished. Sanskrit texts influenced religious and philosophical thought across the region. Indian Ocean trade. Indian merchants played a central role in the vast trade networks connecting East Africa, Arabia, and Southeast Asia. Spices, textiles, ivory, and precious stones traveled across the ocean in both directions. India served as the middle link between the world's major regions. Africa, powerful kingdoms, and expanding trade. Africa during this era was home to thriving and wealthy societies, many of which grew stronger thanks to long-distance trade. West Africa, the Empire of Mali, begins to rise. As the older kingdom of Ghana declined, a new power began to form in West Africa, Mali. It would soon become one of the richest empires in the medieval world, especially after the rise of famous leaders like Sundiki Keita and later Mansa Musa. Gold from West Africa flowed north across the Sahara, exchanged for salt, books, tools, and horses. These trade routes linked Africa with North Africa and the Mediterranean. East Africa, the Swahili coast. Along the coast of East Africa, city-states like Kilwa, Mombasa, and Zanzibar became wealthy trade ports. They exchanged African goods, gold, ivory, timber, with merchants from Arabia, India, and China. A unique Swahili culture formed, blending African, Arab, and Persian influences. Central and Southern Africa. States like Great Zimbabwe built impressive stone structures and traded with distant regions. African societies during this time were organized, innovative, and deeply connected to global commerce. The Americas, building advanced civilizations. Across the Atlantic, societies in the Americas grew increasingly complex. The Maya transition. The Maya did not vanish, as popular myths say, but they shifted from their great cities into smaller communities. Their knowledge of astronomy, farming, and art continued to influence the region. The Toltec and later civilizations. In central Mexico, the Toltec civilization rose to prominence, known for its warrior culture and impressive architecture. Their capital, Tula, became an influential center until other groups later reshaped the region. The Andean civilizations. In South America, the Wari and Tiwanaku civilizations developed advanced farming techniques, including terrace agriculture. They built road systems, shared cultural ideas, and shaped the region long before the rise of the Inca. These societies had no contact with the Old World, but they independently developed sophisticated technologies, art, and government structures. A more connected world than ever before. By the year 1100 or so, something remarkable was happening. Trade routes.
By the early 1700s, the world was stepping into a brand new rhythm. For thousands of years, human power, animal power, wind, and water were the main engines of civilization. But now something different was brewing, something that would rewrite almost every part of human life: the Industrial Revolution. People didn't know it yet, but the entire speed of the world was about to multiply. The Industrial Revolution begins. It started in Britain, partly by chance and partly because they had the right ingredients at the same time. Lots of coal near the surface, rivers for transportation, a growing population, and access to global trade, plus new inventions arriving one after another. The most game-changing invention was the steam engine. At first, it was used to pump water out of coal mines, but soon it became clear the steam engine could power almost anything: mills, factories, trains, ships. Once humans figured out how to turn steam pressure into mechanical force, the world shifted gears. Factories began to replace small workshops. Production sped up. Goods became cheaper. Cities grew quickly as people left farms searching for factory jobs. Life became more crowded, more polluted, more hectic, but also more interconnected. Britain led the way, but soon the technology spread to Europe, the United States, and eventually across the world. Every region that adopted these new machines saw its society transformed. Transportation revolution. Before this period, most people spent their entire life within 20 miles of where they were born. Travel was slow, expensive, and uncomfortable. But then came steamships, which crossed oceans in weeks instead of months. Railways, which connected cities like veins and arteries inside a growing industrial body. And later, cars, which put mobility into the hands of ordinary people. The world shrank. A person in the 1850s could travel farther in 1 week than their ancestors had in an entire lifetime. It was the beginning of a connected planet. Communication revolution. At the same time, new inventions changed how fast ideas could move. The telegraph turned long distances into short ones. A message that once took a month by ship could now be sent in minutes. People were shocked. Some even thought it was magic. Then came the telephone, bringing the human voice into the game.
Later, photography and motion pictures allowed people to capture moments forever and share them across the globe. Humanity was building a global mind, even if nobody realized it yet. The rise of global empires. While these technologies spread, European nations expanded their reach across the world. Britain, France, Spain, Portugal, the Netherlands, Belgium, and later Germany and Italy built empires that stretched across Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. This era had two sides. On one side, new infrastructure appeared. Railways, schools, hospitals, ports. Trade connected distant cultures. Technology spread faster. On the other side, millions of people lost their freedom. Native cultures were suppressed. Land and resources were taken. Borders were drawn without considering local histories. Forced labor and violence were common. Many of the world's modern political tensions come from these centuries of colonization. America's expansion. Across the ocean, the United States was growing rapidly. After gaining independence in the late 1700s, the country expanded westward. New states were added, often through conflict, negotiation, or the displacement of indigenous peoples. By the 1800s, the U.S. was rising into a major industrial and political power. Factories grew, railroads spread, and immigration brought millions of people from Europe and Asia. But the nation was pulled apart by a core issue: slavery. The American Civil War, 1861 to 1865, became one of the deadliest conflicts in history at that time. The northern states, which opposed the expansion of slavery, fought the southern states, which depended heavily on it. After the war ended, slavery was abolished, and the U.S. eventually healed and continued growing, but the scars of that period still influence American life today. Science takes center stage. As machines transformed society, scientists were also rewriting humanity's understanding of the universe. Isaac Newton had already changed physics, but now new thinkers were pushing boundaries even further. Charles Darwin introduced the idea of evolution through natural selection. It shook society's view of life itself. Michael Faraday helped uncover electricity's secrets, laying the groundwork for almost every modern device. Louis Pasteur proved germs cause disease, leading to vaccines and safer medicine. James Clerk Maxwell discovered the laws of electromagnetism, which later enabled radios, microwaves, and Wi-Fi. Science became a global project. Instead of just studying the world, humans were now manipulating it. Urbanization and the new social world. By the late 1800s, many cities were unrecognizable compared to a few generations earlier. Factories hummed day and night. Skyscrapers began rising. Cities installed electric streetlights, running water systems, public transport, sewer networks. Life expectancy increased as medicine improved. Education spread. Middle classes formed. People gained leisure time, something rare in ancient eras. But industrialization also brought problems: child labor, unsafe working conditions, pollution, extreme poverty in crowded neighborhoods, inequality between factory owners and workers. Workers demanded better treatment, forming labor unions and pushing for rights the modern world takes for granted: minimum wage, safety laws, and the weekend. Japan's fast transformation. One of the most surprising changes happened in Japan. For centuries, Japan isolated itself from the outside world. But in the mid-1800s, Western powers forced Japan to trade. Instead of collapsing, Japan modernized at incredible speed. The country sent students to Europe and America, built railways, created factories, and formed a modern army. Within a few decades, Japan became a major global power, one of the only non-Western nations to industrialize during this era. This shift later changed world history in dramatic ways. The world becomes a network. By the early 1900s, the world looked completely different from 300 years earlier. Cars filled streets. Telephones connected voices across continents. Radios delivered news instantly. Electricity powered factories, homes, and cities. Nations traded across oceans. Millions of people migrated seeking opportunity. For the first time ever, everyday people could hear the same news, see the same images, wear factory-made clothes, and travel distances their ancestors never imagined. Human life was accelerating, and the momentum was building towards something big. Competition and tension. The rapid changes brought wealth and progress, but also rivalry. Industrial nations competed for land, resources, power, influence. Europe was especially tense. Old empires like Britain and France were powerful, but worried about rising nations like Germany. Alliances formed, weapons improved, armies grew. It was an age of confidence, but also fear. Politicians believed technology would solve everything. Scientists believed progress would never stop. Many citizens believed humanity was entering its greatest era. But beneath the optimism was a buildup of pressure. A pressure that would soon explode. At the edge of a new century. As the 20th century approached, humanity had achieved things unimaginable before. Mastering steam, unlocking electricity, connecting continents, curing diseases, lifting millions out of poverty, building global trade networks, creating mass education, extending human lifespan, turning nations into industrial giants. People were living longer, traveling farther, working differently, and communicating faster than ever before. The modern world was born. But with great power came great risk. Machines that made life easier could also make war deadlier. Nations that connected more deeply could also collide more violently. Humanity was standing at a crossroads.
The 20th century opened with confidence. People believed technology would make life better forever. They had new machines, new medicines, new ideas. Cities buzzed with energy. Nations traded constantly. Many thought humanity had outgrown large-scale war. But this confidence was fragile. Beneath it were rivalries, alliances, and tensions moving quietly like underground rivers. In Europe especially, nations felt competitive and threatened at the same time. It was a world connected by trains, telegraphs, and industry, yet still divided by politics, empires, and pride. And in 1914, all of these forces collided. The First World War begins. It started with an assassination in the Balkans, a region full of old conflicts. When a Serbian nationalist killed Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary, it triggered a chain reaction. But this one event didn't cause the war. It simply lit a fuse that had been slowly building for years. The major European powers had made a web of alliances. If one nation was attacked, its allies would fight too. This meant a small conflict could drag in entire empires. And that's exactly what happened. By the time armies mobilized, most of Europe was trapped inside a huge war machine. Countries declared war so fast that people barely understood what was happening. Nobody expected the war to last long, but they were wrong, very wrong. Trench warfare and industrial destruction. This war was different than anything before. Industrialization had created machine guns, rapid-fire artillery, poison gas, tanks, submarines, airplanes with bombs. The world's new inventions, originally meant to improve life, were now used to take it. The most iconic image of World War I was the trench. Long ditches stretching for hundreds of miles across France and Belgium. Soldiers lived in mud, cold, and constant danger. Between the trenches was no man's land, a barren stretch where moving even a few feet could mean death. Battles lasted months and cost millions of lives, yet often gained only a few miles of ground. Entire towns disappeared. Entire generations of young men never returned home. The war revealed the brutal side of modern technology. The world changes during the fight. During the war, huge changes quietly reshaped societies. Women entered factories and offices in large numbers, taking jobs previously closed to them. Their role in keeping economies running helped spark new demands for rights and equality. Colonies across Africa and Asia were dragged into the war as soldiers or laborers, which later fueled independence movements. And in Russia, the stress of war caused a total collapse of the government. A revolution in 1917 brought the Bolsheviks to power, creating the world's first communist state, the Soviet Union. The world order was shifting even as the fighting continued. The war's end and aftermath.
In 1918, exhausted armies and collapsing empires finally brought the war to an end. But the peace that followed was troubled. The Treaty of Versailles punished Germany severely. Many Germans felt humiliated and unfairly blamed. The economy crashed, people lost trust in the government. This unstable situation would later create the perfect opening for extremist politics. At the same time, the world tried to rebuild. New countries appeared in Europe as old empires, Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, Russian, fell apart. Technology continued advancing. Air travel improved, radio became common, cars became affordable. For a moment in the 1920s, things felt bright again. It was a decade of movies, jazz, new fashion, and scientific progress. But underneath the celebration, danger was growing. The Great Depression. In 1929, the global economy collapsed. Banks failed, businesses closed, millions lost their jobs, people lost their homes, hunger spread even in wealthy nations. The Depression hit nearly every country on Earth, and desperate people began turning to leaders who promised simple answers. In Germany, Italy, and Japan, these leaders were aggressive nationalists who believed power and expansion were the only solutions. Germany was especially vulnerable. When Adolf Hitler came to power, he promised to rebuild pride, restore the military, and reverse the humiliation of World War I. The world was sliding toward another conflict, one even larger than the last. The Second World War begins. World War II started in 1939 when Germany invaded Poland. Britain and France declared war, but Germany's army moved so fast it shocked the world. Tanks, planes, and coordinated attacks created a new kind of warfare called Blitzkrieg, or lightning war. Within years, Germany controlled most of Europe, Italy fought in North Africa, Japan expanded across East Asia and the Pacific. The war became global. And at the same time, unimaginable horrors were happening. Under Hitler's rule, millions of Jews, along with other targeted groups, were murdered in concentration camps. The Holocaust became one of the darkest chapters in human history. The turning point. The war began to shift after a few key events. Germany's invasion of Soviet Union failed. Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, bringing the United States into the war. Massive battles in the Pacific, North Africa, and Eastern Europe slowly pushed the Axis powers back. Cities were bombed, millions died, the world was on fire. By 1945, Germany collapsed under combined Allied pressure. Hitler died. Europe's war ended. But in Asia, Japan fought on until the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These were the first, and so far the only times nuclear weapons were used in war. Japan surrendered soon after. The world emerged scarred, traumatized, and ready for change. The Cold War began. After World War II, 2 superpowers shaped global politics. The United States, leading the capitalist world, the Soviet Union, leading the communist world. Both sides feared the other's influence. Both had nuclear weapons capable of destroying the planet. Instead of direct war, they competed through spies, propaganda, space exploration, proxy wars in other countries, and political pressure. This long struggle became known as the Cold War. The world lived under the threat of nuclear conflict for decades. Decolonization and independence. At the same time, empires were collapsing. Countries in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East gained independence, sometimes peacefully, sometimes through conflict. India, Pakistan, Indonesia, Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, and dozens of more nations emerged on the world stage. It was one of the largest political transformations ever seen. Technology changed daily life. From the 1950s to the 1980s, everyday life changed faster than any time before. Televisions entered living rooms. Computers arrived in huge rooms, then on desks. Rockets sent satellites into orbit. Humans landed on the moon. Medicine advanced rapidly. Cars and highways filled the world. Global trade connected economies. People could travel across continents by plane, communicate instantly, and access news in real time. The modern world was taking shape. The fall of the Soviet Union. In 1991, after years of economic struggles and political pressure, the Soviet Union dissolved. The Cold War effectively ended. The United States became the world's main superpower. Many former Soviet countries became independent. Europe grew more united. Globalization accelerated. The late 19th century felt like a moment of stability, but new challenges were rising, standing at the edge of a new century. By the year 2000, the world had nearly 6 billion people, the internet connecting homes worldwide, improving medicine, rising democracies, expanding trade, fast travel, modern cities. But also, environmental damage, increasing inequality, political tensions, terrorism, cultural clashes, new diseases, and rapid technological change. Humanity had survived 2 world wars and built a global civilization, but the future was still uncertain.
The 21st century began with a strange mix of optimism and uncertainty. On one hand, humanity had never been more connected or technologically advanced. On the other hand, the world felt delicate, like a complex system where one event could cause global shockwaves. People were excited about the future. The internet was spreading quickly. Phones were becoming smarter. Medical breakthroughs were saving more lives. Millions of people were escaping extreme poverty. Many believed the new century would be defined by peace and cooperation. But the early 2000s would prove that danger and instability never fully disappear. They simply changed shape. The rise of the digital age. The biggest shift at the start of the century was digital technology. This transformation was not slow or gentle. It exploded across the world almost overnight. In 2000, most people still used simple mobile phones. The internet was mostly used for email, news, and basic websites. Only a small part of daily life happened online. But within 15 years, everything changed. Smartphones became powerful computers in your pocket. Social media connected billions of people instantly. Online stores replaced physical shops. Map apps replaced printed directions. Music, movies, and books became streams of data. Work moved online. Education moved online. Banking moved online. Human communication evolved faster than ever before. People could speak in real time with friends across the planet. Entire relationships, friendships, romance, business were now digital. The digital age shaped a new kind of global culture, one not limited by geography. But as people would soon discover, global connection came with new risks. September 11th and the shock to the world. On that morning in the United States, terrorists hijacked passenger planes and crashed them into the World Trade Center towers in New York City, the Pentagon near Washington, D.C., and a 4th plane crashed in Pennsylvania after passengers fought back. Nearly 3,000 people died. The world watched in disbelief. The attack changed global politics instantly. It triggered the War on Terror, leading to conflicts in Afghanistan and Iraq. Security measures around the world tightened. Airports changed forever. Governments expanded surveillance. Fear and mistrust grew. 9/11 didn't just start a war, it reshaped the global mindset. The War on Terror and global tensions. The following decade saw long, difficult conflicts. Soldiers from many countries were sent to the Middle East. Cities were damaged, millions of civilians were affected. The wars lasted far longer than expected. Groups like Al-Qaeda and later ISIS used propaganda and the internet to spread their influence. Terror attacks happened in many countries. Meanwhile, debates grew worldwide. How far should governments go to keep people safe? How much freedom should be sacrificed for security? Why were these conflicts lasting so long? It was a time of complexity, pain, and political division. The economic crisis of 2008. Just as the world was dealing with terrorism and ongoing wars, another crisis appeared, this time financial.
In 2008, major banks began collapsing due to risky investments and unstable housing markets. The global economy fell into a deep recession. Millions lost jobs. Homes were repossessed. Businesses failed. Governments had to bail out banks to prevent a complete economic meltdown. This crisis shook trust in financial systems. It showed how interconnected the world economies had become. A problem in one country could spread around the world within days. But it also led to new technology and new ways of thinking. During this time, people created cryptocurrencies, crowdfunding, mobile banking, new digital companies. The crisis damaged the old system but pushed the world toward new solutions. The rise of social media and a new public voice. Around this same period, social media platforms became global forces. At first, they were simple, places to share photos, connect with friends, or express yourself. But quickly, they became powerful. Movements spread across countries. News traveled faster than governments could control. Videos recorded by ordinary people changed public opinion. Celebrities and politicians spoke directly to millions. Entire communities formed online. Social media became the public square of the digital age. It connected people, but also created echo chambers, misinformation, and polarization. Truth became harder to identify. Lies could spread as quickly as facts. Humanity had created its most powerful communication tool, but had not yet learned how to use it safely. Globalization accelerated. Through the 2000s and early 2010s, globalization changed everyday life. Products were now built using parts from many countries. Companies had offices worldwide. Students studied abroad. Tourism grew. Food and music from one culture became normal in another. Families became mixed across continents. Globalization brought the world together, but made crises spread faster too. The climate crisis moved to center stage. Meanwhile, scientific warnings about climate change became more urgent. For decades, scientists had measured rising temperatures, melting ice, higher sea levels, and stronger storms. But in the 21st century, these effects became impossible to ignore. Countries experienced extreme heat waves, massive wildfires, hurricanes and typhoons of record strength, shrinking glaciers, coral reef destruction, droughts, and water shortages. Climate change shifted from a distant concern to a major global priority. Nations formed agreements to reduce emissions, develop cleaner energy, and protect ecosystems. The climate crisis became one of the defining issues of the century. The era of new superpowers. During these years, the world's balance of power also shifted. China grew rapidly, becoming a major economic and political force. India expanded its economy and technology sector. Russia asserted influence in Europe and the Middle East. The United States remained powerful, but no longer alone at the top. This created a new global environment. Competition for technology, disputes over trade, cyber attacks, debates over the future of democracy, questions about global leadership. The world was entering a multipolar era. Scientific and medical breakthroughs. Despite the challenges, the 21st century also became a time of incredible innovation. Scientists achieved things once thought impossible: editing genes with CRISPR, mapping the human genome, creating lab-grown organs, landing robots on Mars, discovering thousands of exoplanets, using artificial intelligence in medicine, creating quantum computers. These breakthroughs opened new possibilities but raised new questions. How far should genetic editing go? Will AI replace human jobs? Who controls advanced technology? The line between science fiction and reality grew thinner every year. The COVID-19 pandemic. In late 2019, a new virus appeared, COVID-19. By early 2020, it had spread across the world, shutting down countries, overwhelming hospitals, and changing daily life in ways no one had imagined. Flights stopped, schools closed, streets emptied, families stayed apart. Millions died. The global economy froze. But the pandemic also showed what humanity could achieve. Scientists developed vaccines at record speed. Communities helped each other. Remote work and online learning expanded. Environmental changes during lockdowns revealed how quickly ecosystems respond. COVID-19 became one of the most defining events of the modern era, showing the strengths and weaknesses of global civilization. The world in a state of rapid change. As the 2020s continued, humanity faced new AI tools that could write, create art, and solve complex problems. Debates about privacy, data, and digital rights. Growing tension between major powers. Questions about the future of democracy. Rapid climate changes. Advances in space travel. Rising automation. Shifting cultural values. The world was evolving faster than at any time in history. Daily life in 2025 looked dramatically different from daily life in 2000. Humans now.
The early and mid-21st century became a period unlike any other in human history. For thousands of years, change happened slowly. Generations lived with the same tools, the same knowledge, the same patterns of life. But now, change came so quickly that entire ways of living transformed within a single decade. People woke up in a world where old rules didn't always apply, where innovation moved faster than governments, where technology shaped culture, politics, and even relationships. Humanity was no longer adjusting to change, it was racing to keep up with it. This was the age of transformation, and the choices made during this time would affect the entire future of civilization. The rise of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence had existed for decades, but in the 2020s, it suddenly leapt forward. AI tools learned to understand language, create images, solve problems, code software, diagnose diseases, drive vehicles, teach, translate, and analyze. These systems weren't conscious, but they were powerful. They could handle tasks that once required highly trained humans. Industries began shifting. Factories used robots. Companies automated customer service. Hospitals used AI to read scans. Classrooms used digital tutors. Scientists used AI to design experiments. People began asking new questions. What jobs would disappear? What new jobs would appear? How much control should AI have? Could AI be dangerous if misused? Some saw AI as the greatest tool ever invented. Others feared it could become one of humanity's biggest challenges. But one thing was certain. The world had entered a new era of intelligence, part human, part machine. The battle over information. As digital technology grew, information became the most powerful resource in the world, but it also became the most confusing. In the past, people received news from newspapers, radio, or a few major TV networks. In the 21st century, billions of people could publish instantly online. Every event had 100 different interpretations, some true, some false. A simple question, what actually happened, became harder to answer. Algorithms showed people information they already agreed with. This created echo chambers, digital bubbles, where entire groups saw only one version of the world. It became easy to spread confusion, anger, and division. Countries realized that controlling information was as important as controlling armies. Cyber attacks, hacking, data theft,
and online propaganda became common tools in global conflicts. The internet connected humanity, but also fractured it into competing realities. Social movements in a connected world. But the same tools that created divisions also sparked some of the biggest social movements ever seen. Video recordings shared online showed injustices in real time. Millions of people could organize protests within hours. Movements for racial equality, women's rights, LGBTQ+ rights, environmental protection, anti-corruption, democratic reform spread across countries and continents. Young people became politically active at levels not seen in generations. They used social media to pressure governments, expose wrongdoing, and push for change. This new form of activism was global. A protest in one city could inspire demonstrations across the world. The public had more power than ever, but also more responsibility. Passion moved quickly, but thoughtful solutions still required patience and cooperation. The climate crunch. By the 2030s and 2040s, climate change went from a warning to a daily reality. Coastal cities began building seawalls. Some communities relocated inland. Farmers dealt with new weather patterns. Insurance costs soared. Ecosystems suffered. Species vanished. Wildfires, hurricanes, and heat waves grew stronger and more frequent. But humanity responded with creativity. Solar and wind became the world's main energy sources. Electric cars became common. Countries created reforestation projects. Scientists researched carbon capture machines. Startups developed lab-grown meat to cut emissions. New building materials used less energy. Cities redesigned transportation. Global agreements targeted net zero emissions. The transition wasn't perfect, but progress was real. It showed that when humanity focused on a goal, big changes were possible. Still, the climate crisis reminded the world of an important truth. Earth was not unlimited. It needed care, cooperation, and long-term thinking. Health, longevity, and life itself. Advances in medicine reshaped what it meant to be human. Gene editing allowed scientists to fix some inherited diseases before a child was even born. Personalized medicine analyzed a person's DNA to choose the best treatments. New vaccines prevented formerly deadly illnesses. Robotic surgery became precise and common. Wearable devices monitored health in real time. Researchers even explored ways to slow aging. They studied cellular repair, blood molecule changes, genetic pathways linked to lifespan, regeneration of organs. Some experiments in animals showed dramatic results. The idea of humans living significantly longer, perhaps even 120 years or more in good health, became a serious topic of scientific research. But these breakthroughs raised new questions. Who would have access to advanced treatments? Would longer life create new social problems? How should society adapt if people live twice as long? The line between science and philosophy grew thinner every year. Space, the new frontier again. In the late 19th century, humans landed on the moon, but after the early excitement, space exploration slowed. For decades, it mostly involved satellites and robotic probes. But in the 21st century, something changed. Private companies joined the race. New rockets were reusable, making launches cheaper. Space agencies planned missions to Mars. Telescopes discovered thousands of planets around distant stars, some potentially similar to Earth. Astronomers searched for signs of life using radio waves and chemical signatures in alien atmospheres. A new space age began. Humans built permanent bases on the moon. Robotic explorers mapped Mars in detail. Plans for Mars colonization took shape. Asteroid mining became a real idea. Telescopes looked deeper into the universe than ever before. Humanity's oldest dream, reaching the stars, felt closer than at any time in history. A changing world order. As technology reshaped daily life, the global balance of power shifted again. China became an economic giant, and a leader in manufacturing, technology, and infrastructure. India grew rapidly, becoming one of the most influential nations in the world. The United States remained a major power but faced competition. Europe focused on unity, sustainability, and stability. Africa developed one of the youngest, fastest-growing populations. The world was no longer dominated by one country. It had become a complex system of regional powers, alliances, and rivalries. Asia rising, Africa transforming, Latin America modernizing, the Middle East shifting, Europe stabilizing, North America innovating. This new multipolar world created opportunities, but also tension. Trade disputes, cyber warfare, and territorial conflicts became common. Diplomacy became more important than ever. Culture in the digital era. Culture evolved rapidly during this time. Music, movies, games, and art spread globally. A song created in one country could become popular everywhere within hours. Languages blended, fashion styles mixed. Memes became a universal form of expression. People formed digital communities based on interests instead of geography. Someone in Brazil could bond with someone in Japan over the same shows, games, or hobbies. The world's cultures didn't disappear, they grew together, sharing ideas like never before. But these shifts also created debates. Was global culture drowning out local traditions? Were people becoming too dependent on screens? Was attention shrinking because of fast-paced content? Humanity had more entertainment at any point in history, but also more distractions. Economies of the future. By mid-century, the economy was shaped by automation, digital currencies, robotics, remote work, online marketplaces, renewable energy, biotech, AI-driven innovation. Many physical jobs became automated, but new kinds of work emerged. Data analysis, digital design, AI training, renewable energy management, robotics maintenance, space industry careers, virtual world development.